Hi everybody. Today is my second video of a movie review, and today is going to be the day that I let everybody know that the name of my channel is instantly going to change. I understand there's actually other people who go by Dom who do movie reviews, so I'll be actually going by my tag name in most of my internet accounts. This is going to be now Space Wizards Movie Reviews. So let's get started. The movie I decided to review is more of a retrospective of a film, is The Mask. It's one of my all-time favorite movies from my childhood, one of my favorite actors, Jim Carrey. He did an amazing job in this movie. He really did. Now, something that a lot of people don't know is that this movie is not an original story. This movie is based off of the Dark Horse Comics novel by the same name, The Mask. If you ever pick it up, it's a lot more brutal than a lot of you are going to assume it's going to be. The movie actually had scene for scene a lot of the graphic novel parts, but they had to edit it to make it not a rated R film, because in the comic he blatantly kills a lot of people. So just fair warning. It's good though. It's really good. So let's talk about the cast. Besides Jim Carrey, there are some other notable Hollywood actors, but the most important one is Cameron Diaz. This is Cameron Diaz's very first role, and whew.
Love makes me treat you the way that I do, the way that I do. Gee, baby, ain't I good to you? There's nothing to.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Cameron Diaz. It's incredible. It was her first serious role in a motion picture, and it really just took her career off. Now, if you watch the movie again and you watch the swing dancing scene in the Coco Bongo Club, if you look closely in any of the more intricate dance moves that she does, and even what Jim Carrey does, those are stunt doubles. They did a really good job at the time, kind of trying to make it, fudge it, make it not look. But if you look closely, you can totally see the stunt doubles. It's pretty funny. And I can't forget the dog. Yes, the dog, Milo, was a very important character in the graphic novel and also in this movie, which I love that they actually played a homage to both. So, that being said, and the fact that I love this movie, rewatching it, there was one scene that I know a lot of people now aren't going to find funny. They're not going to think it's amusing, it's inappropriate. Two scenes in particular. One is a scene where Stanley Ipkiss is in his office in the bank, and his manager is very creepy when it comes to Cameron Diaz's character. It was honestly pretty unnecessary to have that scene in the film, but I understand that this was a stereotype of higher ups in the 90s. It was very stereotypical to have a misogynist male boss there who's kind of, questionable. But the other scene is when they go to Landfill Park and she's supposed to meet up with the Mask for the second time, but in a more romantic light. Whew. Yeah, this is the scene that pisses a lot of people off. Now, Jim Carrey depicts, from what I understood when I was a child, he was supposed to be very cartoonish, so he was supposed to be Pepe Le Pew, where he was, after the girl and he wouldn't take no for an answer, which, in retrospect, really rapey, really putting himself forward. Even the dialogue that he uses, Cameron Diaz's character is very scared. She actually even kicks him in the crotch as a self-defense maneuver, and he still wouldn't take no for an answer. Which, if the police didn't show up, I don't want to know how that scene would have progressed. Now, remember, this movie was filmed in the early 90s. Let me check. 94. Yes, 1994 was when this movie came out. So, it was a different time that we all have to remember. This is a 20-year-old film now. Seriously, it's old. It's an old movie, but it is still fantastic for what it is. The cinematography is very good. It isn't as graphic novel as I would have hoped, but then again, not a lot of people know that this story was based off of an actual graphic novel. So, my final thoughts about this film. It's a must watch. If you've never seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it. It's one of my favorite movies. Jim Carrey, young, right out of In Living Color. It's not his very first film, but it was still in the beginning of his movie archives. Now, the fact that it is a graphic novel, and if you read the graphic novel, you see the mask and how animated and how ridiculous he is. You really appreciate Jim Carrey's portrayal, because it's not just, oh, it's crazy old Jim Carrey. No. He did his research, looked at the graphic novel, and portrayed a character. That's what that man has done for years. He portrays characters really, really well. So if anyone actually has a physical copy of the original VHS of The Mask, say hello to my cat. She decided to get involved. Well, say hello. There is a beautiful part of the after the movie credits that has an interview with Space Ghost back when Space Ghost was still in actual syndication, which is awesome. Yeah, there was an interview with Jim Carrey about The Mask on Space Ghost Coast to Coast. If anyone is watching this movie doesn't know what that is, you got a lot of free time in the next week or so, look up Space Ghost Coast to Coast. It was one of the best Adult Swim shows in existence because it started before there was an Adult Swim. It is actually the first Adult Swim show because it was the only mature content that Cartoon Network actually would drop back in the 90s. So, something to consider. And let's talk about the soundtrack. The soundtrack of this movie is very 90s. This was in the time period when movies had a big soundtrack that not necessarily all the songs were in the movie, but the original motion picture soundtrack would be very good. The song that they play at the end of the credits is a song by Tony Tone. And if you don't know this, if you get that album, you actually do get Jim Carrey singing Cuban Pete. That was Jim Carrey singing Cuban Pete. All in all, I'm going to give this movie a must-watch because it's a classic. Please don't get too offended by those other scenes that I mentioned, because this is an older film. This is not a Weekend at Bernie's or like, I don't know, Porky's or any of those older 80s movies that were so brash and kind of gross about these kinds of subjects that we can't avoid that when rewatching them. But The Mask is one where it's appropriate if you really think of it as a graphic novel movie. Now, if it is a graphic novel movie and you really think of it like that, this was the only good comic book movie that came out in the 90s. Everything else was hot garbage. But no one knows that this guy right here is a graphic novel movie. It's great. Watch it. Do yourself a favor. Now, so I'll probably be doing another movie review very, very soon because we've all got the time to do so. So, this is Space Wizards signing off with my second movie review, The Mask.